And on behalf of the Alumni Board and the Alumni Engagement Office and the SMC faculty, I want to thank you for joining us for the 13th Annual SMC Career Symposium. And this is the Business and Entrepreneurial Panel Discussion. Joining me from the board to co-moderate this with me is Jeff Labonte. Say hello, Jeff.
Yes, hello. Jeff Labonte, class of 1998, was a business major and currently working for Hickok & Boardman Insurance up in Burlington, Vermont. And it's great to be here.
Jeff. Yeah, and myself, I'm located up in Scarborough, Maine. And my wife is also a St. Mike's grad, class of 1990. And our daughter is class 21. So she's in her final year there. So we're a legacy family. And I work for a company called Disability RMS. We're a division of Sun Life Financial US. Been there 15 years, and prior to that, I was at Unum, which is an insurance company as well. So first of all, Jeff and I want to thank the panel members that have joined us tonight. Thank them for their time and their engagement in this. This is a very important what we do for the alumni. It's very important for current students. The folks that have joined us tonight for the panel are Kate Bowen. Kate is, if she's still with us, I think maybe she's dropped off. I can't see her anymore. But anyway, Kate is class of 2004. She's the CEO and founder of GCB Medical Supply. And then we have Chris Lagan, class of 92. And Chris is the managing director and COO at Congress Asset Management. And then we've got Paul Plunkett, and Paul is class of 1986, so my decade, and he's the COO at Hickok & Boardman. It looks like Kate is coming back on to join us here, which is great. So in just a second, I'll turn it over to the three of them to introduce themselves, tell us more about themselves, tell us more about their career paths. But I also want to remind all those folks who are listening in, participating tonight, that you can find their bios for Kate, Chris, and Paul on the website. And you can also connect with them on SMC Connect or on LinkedIn. So we're going to have time at the end here for Q&A because we'll spend maybe 5 minutes or so for each of them to kind of tell us their story. And we'll save time for Q&A. So if you want to submit a question, go ahead and take a look and do that within the chat or the Q&A function. But in addition to that, we had some questions submitted ahead of time, and thank you for folks who did that. So we have a few questions that we'll try to get to as well. I'm going to turn it over. If Kate, you're okay with going first, I'll have you start off and go ahead and introduce yourself, share your story, your career path from when you left St. Mike's and what you're doing today.
Sure, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I was having a little technical difficulty, but my name is Kate Bowen. That's my married name. I graduated St. Michael's as Kate Quillinan in 2004. My major was business, and I left St. Michael's and moved to Boston and did a number of odd and end jobs until I kind of found myself. It took me about a year, but I got into the medical device industry, and that's where I really found a true passion to in both selling, but also in the medical field. So I sold a product that was helpful in the clinical setting to help reduce bloodstream infections, which at the time was something and still is a huge initiative for hospitals across our country because Medicare and Medicaid no longer reimburse for hospital-acquired infections. So every infection acquired in the hospital is something that the hospital has to pay. So out of pocket, and each infection is very costly. It could cost anywhere from $50,000 to over hundreds of thousands of dollars because it prolongs hospitalization and requires antibiotics. So that was where I really hit my stride in my career and realized I loved sales and I loved being in the medical space. I rose through the organization that I was with from a field sales representative covering New England to a field sales trainer to a product specialist. And then my most recent position within the company called Becton Dickinson was a business development executive, where I was in charge of top strategic accounts and writing contracts and acquiring new business. I was considered a hunter, someone who goes out and acquires new business and has a pretty large quota associated with that. So I've been in the medical device field for 15 years, started very soon after I left St. Michael's. I also 6 years ago I left Boston and moved back to Vermont, just south of Burlington, in a town called Charlotte. And I left the medical device field, took a hiatus, had 2 children. I now have 4. And I actually started a children's clothing line because I thought I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I finally got the opportunity to do that. And then I realized that I was going crazy. And so I taught myself to sew in my attic in Charlotte and started making children's clothes. I channeled my sales experience and sent pictures to my favorite boutiques in Boston and all of New England, up and down the coastline. And everyone wrote back and said, "We love these designs. We want these for next spring." So then I was like, oh, wow. Okay, well, that would require me sewing thousands of dresses. And so I actually reached out to a friend I knew who worked for a US-based nonprofit in Honduras, where they elevated women out of poverty and taught them a skill to sew. And the women of Mi Esperanza produced Petite Peony's first collection. So I'm the founder and the CEO and the designer of Petite Peony, which is a children's clothing line that is sold now in Nordstrom and Neiman Marcus and J. Crew. We have our online store. We're also sold on Masonette. And Bergdorf Goodman is another. So it really grew from something really small in Charlotte, Vermont, 6 years ago to a larger clothing company. Now, I always moonlighted, I guess you would say, as a business device consultant with Becton Dickinson to get the funding to start my business. It was a very grassroots business, and we maxed out our credit cards, and we really took a risk on this Petite Peony business. We were living in Charlotte for a few years, and I was traveling a lot for my consultant position at Becton Dickinson. My husband works in medical devices. He worked at Stryker at the time. And so we had opportunities to go back to Boston, to be near a major airport, to fly direct around the country. Because when you fly out of Burlington, you definitely make a stop unless you're going to New York or Atlanta or somewhere pretty close by. So I moved to Duxbury, Massachusetts from Charlotte, Vermont, and I opened a storefront for Petite Peony, still doing the medical device consultant work. So I was working a lot. My husband and I decided to have a 4th child. Her name is Georgia Claire Bowen, and it was a completely healthy pregnancy. And when she was born, she was unexpectedly in cardiac arrest. So it really threw our lives upside down. She sustained 25 minutes of CPR in the delivery room. She, 14 hours later, went on ECMO, which is total life support. It's a machine that takes over the work of your heart and lungs. And we were told that she wasn't going to make it, that we baptized her, and we really were preparing for the worst, until Boston Children's Hospital heard of Georgia, because my husband and I, we just wouldn't let this go. We said, there has to be a solution. You have to figure this out. She was a healthy baby yesterday. This can't happen. Boston Children's Hospital picked her up on life support and brought her there. And she survived what was deemed to be nearly impossible. She was 14 days on ECMO. She had a life-saving mitochondrial transplant on day 9, which you can read about in the New York Times. She was the first human who ever had mitochondrial cells deployed through her left coronary artery successfully. She also went from ECMO to an LVAD, which is a left ventricular assist device, so she can be supported until she had her heart transplant when she was 4 months old. And I tell you this because this whole experience of my career has been a story of perseverance. And Georgia gave me the ultimate gift of perseverance. I sat at her bedside for 6 months, And I realized I was channeling my medical device background with Becton Dickinson selling infusion therapy and my fashion experience in the children's clothing company that I started. And I realized that there is not a pediatric hospital garment available for kids. That in the hospital, the children are offered what the adults wear. We call it the hospital Johnny. And the hospital Johnny is a hazard to babies in the hospital. It actually wraps around babies and you have to cut it off. It comes in conflict with a lot of their lines and their tubes. So I developed a garment, it's patent pending, and it's called the Georgie, which will replace the hospital Johnny, and is named after my daughter, Georgia. So I'm very proud to share that the Georgie is now in Boston Children's Hospital. It launched this week. It's after a long road of selling it to the supply chain. This product category hasn't been innovated in 50 years. We sold it through the supply chain, and now he's actually one of my closest advisors, and he made changes to the product to help it be more efficient from a laundering perspective and through and being able to eliminate other products. So we were able to kind of standardize and consolidate products and save the hospital money. So with the Georgie, I was speaking with the vice president of supply chain in March, right after the country shut down because of COVID. And we were planning the implementation of the Georgie, and he said, Kate, because of all your factory connections and relationships overseas, can you help us find PPE? We are in dire need of PPE. And I said, yeah, let me take a look. And he's like, okay, because we need 1 million procedural loop masks. And I was like, oh my God, like, that is going to be really challenging. So again, back to perseverance. I was really motivated to find these nurses and doctors at Boston Children's Hospital PPE because they saved my daughter's life. And without them, Georgia Claire Bowen would not be here today. So I found them 1 million procedural loop masks when it was really challenging. It was right around the time when Bob Kraft flew his private jet over to, or the Patriots jet over to China to pick up some N95s. It was really challenging getting product out of China. And I was able to find them procedural loop masks, but then he asked me to find him everything. He was like, well, now we don't have isolation gowns. Can you find me isolation? I need 2 million isolation gowns. Now I need flock swabs. And he just kept throwing everything my direction. And I was able to just keep finding these products, utilizing the connections that I had made. So fast forward to today, and we formed GCB Medical. We've helped over 150 hospitals nationwide secure critical PPE products, and we are entering into long-term partnerships with these hospitals. We've done $32 million in sales in 8 months.
Wow.
And we donated 3% of revenue back to Boston Children's Hospital. And we formed the Georgia Claire Bowen Impact Lab, which stands for Imagining More Possibilities for Advanced Cardiac Therapies. That lab is chaired by Georgia's cardiologist, Dr. Christina Vanderplum, and her cardiothoracic surgeon, Dr. Francis Finn Thompson. That is our proudest achievement, because life is a gift and Georgia is a gift to us, but a heart transplant is not a cure. It's a gift of time. And so we as parents, and me as a mother, I know I need to be part of groundbreaking research that's going to improve the longevity of life for my daughter, and also have a plan B if she needs another heart. So I'm actively working with the inventor of the heartware device that Medtronic owns. He's invented a total artificial heart. And so now we're able to use the money that we've made with GCB Medical Supply and help fund research that could potentially save hundreds of thousands of Americans around the globe every year.
Wow, Kate, that's awesome.
Thank you. That is my history since I left St. Mike's.
Wow. What an amazing story. That's just passion, perseverance. I mean, that's just amazing and relevant too, right? To pivot to, PPE production and just the relevance of that. Kate, thank you so much for sharing your story. That actually moves me, and that's just phenomenal. Thank you so much. So I'm going to hand this off now to Chris. Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey since St. Mike's.
Sure, I'm happy to, although I will say I think my story is going to be a lot simpler and a lot less inspiring than Kate's. That was really impressive. But, I got out in 1992 and really didn't know what I wanted to do then. It was a kind of a poor economy, poor job market at the time. And I certainly did not set myself up for success in that regard, just attending a few job fairs, maybe attending some mock interviews and whatnot, but largely got out of school and didn't really know what to do. So I found a job through a newspaper posting in the Boston Globe at a firm that at the time bought and sold used Macintosh computers, for those of you who remember the old Macs. It was actually a typewriter rental business that saw the decline of the typewriters smartly and migrated to PC rental. And the division that I started with bought and sold used Macs. So it was a nice introduction to technology. And it was actually a very dynamic business model at the time, for which I have a much greater appreciation for today than I did then. So I got that interview and that job ultimately from the St. Michael's connection, because the woman who interviewed me attended St. Michael's, did not graduate from St. Mike's, but attended there and really loved it and had an affinity to the school. And that's ultimately how I got the position. But after a year or so, that business started running into considerable headwinds. PCs were getting cheaper, faster, more powerful by the day. So the fledgling business of buying and selling used computers was not thriving. And candidly, I wasn't that passionate about the role, and I wasn't that good at the role. It was a really heavy sales effort that didn't really lend to my strengths, certainly. So after about a year, a little over, I'd say, I was looking for a new role. I was putting my resume together, and my father started talking to me and to see if I could come over and help him. At the time, it was temporary. It was temporary till I figured out really what I wanted to do with my career. He had founded a company a couple of years prior called Congress Asset Management, and that company invests built portfolios for insurance companies, pension funds, and the like. When I started with my father, there were I think there were 5 of us there, and I came in to do operations and handle operations, administrative, computers, computing investment performance, anything that was really needed, and it was kind of a learn as you go. So I found that I really enjoyed a lot of aspects of it. I could be a reliable contributor. I was kind of a jack of all trades. We were growing pretty nicely at the time. My father's efforts were paying off, and we were growing. So there was a lot of dynamism. There was a lot of need at the company, which is enjoyable in and of itself. And I was able to invest in myself through that experience too. So I got my MBA at Boston University, I think in 1998 or 1999. And then in 2002, I got my CFA designation, Chartered Financial Analyst designation. And those investments in myself were really, I think, critically important. Because I was learning investments, I was learning the investment field, I was learning it from a practical ground up basis, learning how to build investment portfolios, and I grew to like that. Some people are passionate about that from day one. I was not, candidly. I developed into it, and I grew a passion for it. But the extra education that came with that, the pure business education on top of what I got from St. Michael's, which was largely a business education, but with a liberal arts background, was really powerful. And I felt then, and I feel now, it set me on the path to success, because that success became kind of self-fulfilling. I was getting some investment experience, and the education gave me a little more credibility, which opened a few more doors, and those doors opened more doors. So it becomes a nice cycle there. In 2004, I would say, we started to buy out my father's position in 2007 and 2008. And by we, I work with a few of my brothers, 2 of my brothers, my brother Dan and my brother Matt. Dan graduated from St. Michael's a few years before me. I think he's class of 86 or 87, I can't recall. But in any case, in 2004, we were buying out my father and taking a more interest in running the business. 2007 and 2008, we definitely took a heavier hand in the strategic direction of the firm around that time. And fast forward to 2020, and here we are. It's a completely different business right now. At its core, we still do the same thing, building investment portfolios for a whole broad swath of clients nationwide. But beyond that, everything is different. I'm the managing director, chief operating officer. So what that means is anything non-investment rolls up to me. So sales, operations, performance, trading, compliance, among some other key capabilities. We started and later spun out an affiliate firm called Congress Wealth Management. So I have some participation in the wealth management business. But for someone like me who didn't have a clear path coming out of school, I think it's been a fascinating career for me. It's been very enjoyable working in what I'll call family business. That's got its ups and downs. For those who are interested in that topic, I'm happy to speak to it. But it's been really a fascinating journey. I've been just very blessed with a lot of growth professionally, a lot of ability to meet a ton of different people and travel all throughout the country. And it's been a great ride. So what started as a temporary assignment 27 years ago, I guess is still a temporary assignment, but it might be for the rest of my career. I'm not sure.
Chris, thank you. That was great. So while you were talking, I think a comment came in. Chris, Jeff, was there a comment that came in the chat room for Chris?
There was indeed a comment. It was actually for Kate. It said, "Mrs. Bowen, your story is an inspiration to me, a senior of a Catholic high school who would like to study business in college and have a right purpose in life. God bless you."
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're
welcome.
Yeah. So, Chris, I think one of the things that resonated with me that you were talking about is how coming out of school, you didn't really have a clear path at first, right? And then you find it, right? You eventually find it. You just work hard at it, and you find eventually you basically, one of the things you just said was you just kind of worked into your passion. Mm-hmm. And portfolio management kind of became a passion for you. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be something that you've identified right as you're coming out of school and really know what your passion is. You may know, right? You may be very passionate about something, but eventually, and that's similar to my story, eventually you fall into it or you develop into it and you realize it as you're kind of going along your career path. So that's some great comments there, Chris. Thank you. Yeah. So Paul, I'll hand it off to you, Paul Plunkett.
I'm up next. Thank you. Kate, just quickly, my wife and I are very good friends with Jen Swanson. So I've heard you a little bit about your story, which is great. Nice to finally meet you. Mike and Jeff, thanks for having me on tonight. My story is a little bit like Kate's in that I was very passionate about sales. And when I left St. Michael's College in '86 with a business degree, I received a referral from one of the priests that I had become friendly with while at St. Michael's to interview at a company called EMC Corporation. Since then, EMC has sold to Dell and is a several billion dollar company. But when I went to work there, I was interviewed by the entrepreneur that founded the company, Mr. Egan of the EMC. And it just really struck me very hard that entrepreneurial spirit was something I wanted to participate in, and I wanted to own something eventually in my professional career. So worked for EMC for a couple of years, and then decided that I wanted to come back to Vermont, but wanted to stay in the sales game. So I answered an ad in the paper for a position at Hickok and Boardman. The company was 170 years old at the time. Great name. I knew I could use that aspect of the company to my advantage. I had sales ability. So I joined the company in January of '88, had some very early sales success, became friendly with the generation that had owned the company since the middle 1960s, and recognized that I had the potential to be part of the next generation of owners of the company. And so in 1994, 5 of us bought the company from the prior generation. I continued to sell insurance. I still do today. I handle a large client list. But for 25 years or so, I was the sales manager, and really my expertise is really revenue generation. I know how to generate revenue for the company. When I joined here in 1988, we were about $12.5 million in sales. We'll finish this year at 130 million. So the company was 22 people when I joined. It's 100 people, give or take, today, with 6 locations. So now my role as I sunset toward my retirement is more operational. I am still handling, as I said, a large, more strategic list of clients. We feel that's very important in our business. All of the owners and executive managers handle books of business and are close to the customer base. But now I'm in the COO position. So like Chris, IT answers to me, HR. I'm overseeing all the insurance operations, the day-to-day facility operations. So a little different role for me, and I ceded my sales management and revenue generation role to a next generation owner of the company, and that's going very well. So little different story, but passionate about what I do, love what I do. That is so important in your career. You don't always find that day one, but when you do, and you have a vehicle like a Hickok and Boardman that you can really leverage, it's amazing what can happen.
Great advice. Awesome. Hey, so while you guys were talking, I don't know if you saw this or not, but in the chat, Professor Witowski, apparently, I think it looks like Jeff and Kate owe him a couple of assignments from BU 361 going way back. So get on it.
I was hoping that would never catch up with me, but here it is.
Yeah, well.
Yep.
Professor Witowski's on you. He's on to you.
He was on me last year too when we had he was the moderator for our panel last year, so he got on me then too.
So a question that was posed by someone ahead of this symposium was, what's the importance of having a background in technology for your job or in your field, or to enter the workforce in general? And I'm picking on that one because each of you kind of touched on, technology, whether it be technology in the medical field, technology in, portfolio management, technology and, managing a book of business. Paul, I know you've mentioned that you are in charge, your IT reports to you. So I guess whoever wants to jump in on that, any of you or all of you. So, going into your career, did you think, that you needed a background in technology, and kind of how have you developed that if you didn't have that going into your first job? Chris, it looks like you want to talk.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it. I think it's critically important. I almost don't think it's I want to be in technology is even relevant, because it's just it's completely pervasive. And what it brings to every industry in terms of efficiencies, in terms of what you can, efficiencies of time, efficiencies of scale, efficiencies of production, that's not going to stop. And I think for me, thinking back, I candidly resisted that early on in my career, much to my detriment. I didn't, I think maybe not even in my career, maybe during my time at St. Michael's, I think I poo-pooed a little bit the inexorable drive of technology and how it's just going to change and revolutionize every industry. My first job opened my eyes to that. I would not say I'm a technology expert. I would say a combination of some programming skills or some deep technological skills in combination with a lot of the communication skills that a liberal arts education provides is a really powerful skill set to have. And we have such tremendous efficiency. We have about 60 people at Congress Asset Management and another 20 or so at our affiliate company. we would need multiples of that to accomplish what we do without all the technological advances over the last 15 years.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great,
Michael,
great answer. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
I'm just going to jump in and just, if you don't mind, and just read something that Professor Lutovsky jumped in again. He said, "My 2 cents, every company is a tech company. It doesn't mean everyone has to become a geek, but our students / graduates have to be comfortable with technology and with making data-driven decisions," which I think is a good point.
Absolutely.
And I know we only have about 5-6 minutes left, but I wanted to we also have one Q&A that maybe somebody could jump in on. Asking, did you ever feel limited at St. Michael's in regards to internships and connections in respect to its rural location? So I don't know if anybody wants to take a stab at that one.
I'll chime in again, but happy to cede it to the other panelists. I think that's a relatively new development is the need for internships. They've of course have been around for generations, but most of the young folks we are interviewing today have an internship or two or some practical experience coming out of school. And I think those are available in Burlington or in Boston. You can certainly find them. And I think they are very important to have. And it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to follow that for your entire career. It's that experience in learning how to work in a medical environment, a medical device environment, or insurance environment, or an investment environment.
Kate?
I completely agree that it's really important to try to get some experience under your belt. But I would not feel limited to being in the rural areas of Vermont. I do think, especially now more than ever, you can have an internship that's project-based and you check in over Zoom. I've actually had St. Mike's interns and very happy to explore that avenue. We had one from Epitini a couple of years ago. We had an intern from Brown this summer, and I sat down with him one time, but he was extremely effective and he learned so much from what I think is really a really fun experience to work for a startup, a small companies, because you learn the sales process. Because for me as the CEO, I'm doing sales, I'm doing supply chain management, I'm doing operations, I'm doing cash flow analysis. Like I have a hand in every part of the business, and that's something I've learned on the fly. And I think if you were able to work for a small company to see all the different aspects of the business, it would be really beneficial.
Absolutely.
So to those, those students listening in, everybody you see on this screen right here, and others who have participated in this Career Symposium, you reach out, right? Internships are available, probably pretty good chance at most of our companies. If not, we know people who are sponsoring internships. And Paul, I don't know if you wanted to jump in on this. I had one last question before we wrap up.
Yeah, let's take the last question so we don't lose that one, and then we can go back around if we need to.
Yeah.
Michael, I also have one other one too that you might be able to weave into that question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Asking what skills do you think are important to have to become an entrepreneur? That might be a question for Kate, and you might be able to wrap it into one of those other questions. But
it's absolutely going to wrap into this question. That's great. So let's wrap it into this. So like, what one piece of concrete advice, fairly like brief, quick, like piece of concrete advice would you give to the students that are listening who are looking at the prospect of either going into the job market or going on for a continuing education? What one thing would you say this is important, and weave that in with the other
I would say find your passion. I would just quickly, I was a okay student. My high school soccer coach told me I was the greatest athlete that never was. And I found my passion. I knew I am a natural salesperson. I like people, but I also love that thrill of closing a deal. And so I realized that quickly on. And so it doesn't have to be sales. It could be, it could be analytics. It can be design. It can be anything, but just find your passion and don't give up. And if that's my biggest advice, is just the passion.
Thank you, Kate. Paul?
I would agree with Kate, and I would say don't be afraid to take the deep dive. You need to know the details. You need to be genuine. You need to be passionate and interested in your career, but you definitely need to be the expert. Take that time to become the expert. People pay money for that expertise.
Chris?
I think the only thing I would agree with both panelists there, and the only thing I would add is I believe there needs to be folks that work on communication and articulating a message, and increasingly that's important. Succinctly and clearly communicating your message. Not a lot of jobs right now. There's not a lot of jobs out there right now that you don't require some verbal communication, and as folks are increasingly distracted by text and the internet and everything else, you need to be able to clearly and succinctly articulate your message.
Great advice from all three of you. Thanks again for the three of you for joining us. Paul, Chris, Kate, appreciate very much your time. And some great questions there. Thank you from the participants. Just a quick couple of reminders. So in addition to finding each one of us either on SMC Connect or LinkedIn or our bios on the website, there's 2 more panels tonight. And actually we went over a little bit, but the next one's at 6:45. So there's journalism, PR media, and then the second one is environmental studies and sustainability. So hopefully folks are going to jump on those. And again, if you haven't had a chance to take a look at the keynote speaker, please take time to do that. Siham El Hamouni, great, very good, very well done. So take some time to take a look at that. So thank you again. And as you know, St. Mike's logo, or St. Mike's, do well and do good, and stay safe and have a great night.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks,
Thank
Jeff.
you, Michael. Thank you.
Good to be with
Thank
you.
you, everybody.
Bye-bye.